A man sleeps in the sky, while his mechanical image walks the earth. Beyond the Sea has already gone down as one of Black Mirror's bleakest ever episodes. The show has taken some dark turns in the past, but I think the mountain of harshness has just had a new layer of snow fall onto its peak. I'm going to discuss the plot of Beyond the Sea, breaking down why I think the situations experienced within it are nightmarish and emotionally scarring. This means there will be major spoilers ahead, and before I jump in, check the links below to our upcoming project, The Horror Exchange. Thanks in advance. Beyond the Sea transports us to an alternate version of 1969, wherein there's a satellite in space requiring to be manned by two men at all times. These two men are astronauts David, played by Josh Hartnett, and Cliff, played by Aaron Paul. David and Cliff's work in space is vital, with their craft needing two men to operate it. If one of them goes AWOL, then the other is stuck. And this episode does a great job at pushing a conflicting narrative, where David and Cliff endure a tumultuous friction. The reasons as to why I'll go into after some contextual setup. Because being in space is a mentally bewildering environment, in order for the men to be able to keep their sanity, they are able to use a form of body swap technology, where their consciousness can be transmitted into replicas of themselves back on Earth. We can see when in their replica form that David is a great parent and lover, whereas Cliff is very distant. The men possess many opposites to one another, which comes into play down the line. Now for the first proper injection of nightmare fuel, and it's a bloody big dose. One evening, David enters his replica form, and his home has been invaded by a Manson family-like cult. This fits in line with the episode's setting of 1969 California, with the height of the Manson family movement coming in the August of that year with the Sharon Tate murders. Though it isn't made clear in this episode if these invaders are part of the Manson family, you can at least say there's an inspiration from reality. And my goodness, does this go dark. Like, really dark. The invaders here are led by Rory Culkin, who does a frighteningly good job playing the murderous hippie cult leader. If you want another shocking horror film featuring Rory Culkin, check out Lords of Chaos if you dare. The invaders are here to stop the unnatural replica movement. They despise the fact that David is a machine in the image of a man. It's impure, and they want to put a stop to that. Viciously. They target David and restrain him, cutting off his arm with a knife to reveal the machinery and oil within. Despite David's family of his wife and children being human, not machine, this doesn't stop the invaders. David is forced to watch as his family is butchered in front of him, resulting in their blood being smeared on the walls. Not only is the imagery here mortifying, especially with the brutal murder of children involved, but it's so unsettling just how helpless David is. The replica of himself is of no use due to being restrained, and his real self is a million miles away in space. Neither versions are capable of saving his family from their destruction, and then when his replica is set on fire, he's permanently cut off from that link. What we see here is a man who has just lost his wife and kids in an unforgiving personal attack, which his projected mind witnessed, and now he's stuck in space with the memories. He has to live with the grief surging through his real body with no way to fix it. He cannot get a resolution or any closure, so it sends him mad. He isolates himself even further, keeping his distance from Cliff. He stops taking care of himself. David is psychologically devastated. This first act of Beyond the Sea was like a sledgehammer to the gut, but it wasn't the last we were going to have to stomach. After Cliff consoles with his wife Lana, played by Kate Mara, while in replica form, they decide that they could help bring David back to some sanity by allowing him access to Cliff's replica. He would be able to return to Earth for an hour a week to at least escape space for a little while and take the edge off, despite being in Cliff's body at Cliff's home with Cliff's family. This part of the narrative kicks off that friction between Cliff and David, as despite it being something Cliff initially agrees to, it's a decision that David takes advantage of in a manipulative manner. After he's tearfully grieved over his family's murder, David, in Cliff's replica, becomes closer to Lana than the real Cliff is. They have a lot of similarities and interests, including reading and music, and you can see the dichotomy between David and Cliff whenever they use the replica. Lana comes face to face with the same body, but with two polarizing personalities within it, and that's something I also find quite frightening on a character level. It's as if David is trying to take control of Cliff's life. He makes big decisions like striking their son, Henry, and eventually attempts to get it on with Lana. The horrible force David imposes here is sickening. It goes from a helpful favour from Cliff and Lana to get his mind straight, to David going completely overboard and squeezing every last drop of dopamine stimuli from Cliff's life. He's like a parasite, exploiting the weaknesses of his co-pilot for the gains of the butterflies in his stomach. The place this eventually leads us to is a third act I certainly won't be forgetting anytime soon. While David is in the replica, Cliff finds that David has been drawing naked pictures of Lana. We already know that David is not only an artist, agreeing to paint watercolours of Cliff's family home as part of the deal, but we also know that he draws from memory. So the fact he's drawn Lana's naked body, Cliff puts two and two together and deems that Lana must be cheating on him with David's persona in a mechanical version of his body. This is such a crazy concept. Imagine someone being physically attracted to you enough to become your wife, but they're not emotionally attracted to you anymore. Instead, they're emotionally attracted to the man who's piloting a spaceship with you. There's nowhere to run here. Cliff confronts David and wants to batter him, but he realizes this would make things worse for him. He could wring David's neck, but then he'd be stranded in space, unable to fully function the craft. These two men depend on each other for survival, yet their battle over Lana is what divides and segregates them. Cliff can't do anything about it, otherwise it'll impede his doom. Cliff approaches Lana about the drawings, and after an argument, she reveals that she did consider doing things with David in Cliff's body, effectively admitting she was attracted to that combination. Realizing that he must put a stop to David's access to the replica, he tells David that Lana despises him, that the thought of him returning makes her vomit, that he's a disgrace. Basically, a barrage of scathing insults. Yet, it's not true. It's just a narrative Cliff has painted so that David doesn't want to ever return to Earth in the replica. However, oh, does this backfire. While Cliff is outside the ship doing repairs, in a scene where it looks for a second like David has locked him outside, he returns to the ship to learn that David took the tag for the replica link. While Cliff has been outside, David has gone back to the replica, and what Cliff finds when he gets there is the same thing David faced. His family brutally murdered with their blood smeared all over the house. This was a tenacious twist the first time, but this second time hits even harder knowing the reasons why it's happened. David has completely snapped and lost control. Whether he truly thinks that Lana was that scathing towards him and wanted revenge, or he thinks that Cliff lied to him and wanted revenge, the result is the same. David has provided Cliff with the same grief he went through. In effect, he's made a replica. And now, in David's eyes, it's 1-1. It's an even playing field. Both men have lost everything, despite the cruel imbalance that Cliff had nothing to do with the death of David's family. David lost everything, including his mind, and took it out on Cliff, simply for trying to do some good for him. He saw a beacon of light he wanted to reach, and expanded it too far no further. He found a route back to some form of happiness that was cut off from him, and thought that the best result would be to make things even. You don't want me to be happy, so neither should you be. And the episode ends on that same old problem. Both men need to remain alive to mutually survive. Now they must carry out their mission with cooperation, despite the atrocities David has experienced and then committed himself. I think that Beyond the Sea absolutely gains access to our Nightmare Fuel Hall of Fame. Do you agree with this decision? Let us know in the comments below. Please don't forget to check out the Horror Exchange, and I'll see you next time with another dose of Nightmare Fuel.